Hello, I'm Bob Butler from KCBS Radio, and welcome to a forum of three candidates running for the open seat for Antioch City Council District 1. That's the northernmost council district, basically from Highway 4 to the Delta. Today's forum is sponsored by the Contra Costa County Elections Division, CCTV, and the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley and West Contra Costa. We're holding this roundtable via Zoom, so there might be some issues, and taping it in the CCTV studio. Please note the names that appear on the screen may also include their email addresses if you'd like to contact them. The candidates for this office are Manuel Solis, Joy Motz, and Tamisha Walker. I'll begin by asking some questions for each person to answer, and while the time is not monitored here, please be mindful of the length of your answers, and we want to give all candidates the time to tell the voters their thoughts and the platform. So we'll start this with the first question, which is for Tamisha. What's the biggest challenge facing Antioch?
Hello. The biggest challenge facing Antioch right now, in my opinion, would be housing. Housing and homelessness is a big challenge facing Antioch right now. I've had a chance to talk to renters who are concerned that they might not be able to stay in their homes post-COVID. And once the moratorium is lifted on rents, and then also the homeless population, just talking to advocates who have been advocating, and also seeing what the city has been able to do, working with Bridge Housing and connecting folks to resources, and really excited about what the governor is doing in Pittsburgh. I'm hoping that we can address some of these issues and get people stably housed and connected to resources while we also keep people in their homes. That's a big issue that's been rising to the top right now. And that's something that I have been paying close attention to.
Joy, same question.
Well, I have to agree with Tamisha. I think the community's made it pretty clear. It's overwhelmingly that homelessness is their biggest concern. I mean, this is from a city standpoint, this is an economic development issue. It's a public health issue too, as we have a lot of people that are living affecting our businesses and also living in our creeks and streams where our water, it goes into our drinking water. And it's just a humanitarian issue. And the fact of the matter is, some people will say that this could be handled by the city or the county or the state, which typically would handle homeless services. But the reality is they don't have the resources and we don't have the infrastructure in order to do that. So I helped form and spearheaded a homeless task force. When I first got on council in this past year and a half, we've been doing a tremendous amount of research and really trying to determine what's the best way to go forward. And that really ends up falling into what the county is doing over in Pittsburgh at Motel 6, and that is the housing first principle. And what we're bringing forward for consideration to the entire council, hopefully within the next month, is a similar proposal around bridge housing, getting people shelter. When people are living in chaos, it's really impossible for them to get one foot in front of the other. And with the bridge housing, if you get a roof over your head, we provide the wraparound services to them. We're finding that there's great success in getting them into permanent housing.
Thanks. Manny, same question.
These issues really are not standalone issues. They actually are interlinked and interconnected. So I do think that homelessness and the unhoused is one of the primary issues that Antioch is facing. It's one of the most important platforms in my campaign. But also tied in with that is economic development. Because the city has limited resources to dedicate towards this program, and it needs to happen. It needed to happen several years ago. It doesn't need to happen 2 years from now. It needs to happen now. The time has come for us to take some action. But if we don't have sufficient resources to be able to spend on programs that are important to us, then we're dead in the water. We are absolutely dead in the water. So that's why the issue of homelessness or the unhoused is indeed connected with economic development that also needs to take place here in Antioch. We need to have a more aggressive plan to bring and support the local businesses at all levels, small, the intermediate, and then the very large. And we can't afford any more mistakes in those areas. They are interlinked.
Thanks. So, Joy, say you're elected. What's the first thing you're going to do?
Well, I'm going to continue to work on the platform, the things I've been working on, and they are broad. I was elected in 2018 and only been on about a year and a half, and then of course the pandemic came along. So going into the shelter in place has been difficult for the city. You know, everything literally had to shut down. Even our work around homeless services, the beautification projects we had going, all of those things had to kind of stop. But we are picking back up. We're addressing, you know, blight, illegal dumping, really moving forward on the homeless issue. We have a desalination plant that's going forward. We've hired a youth services coordinator who is, we're really looking forward to really increasing our services for, especially after school. We have a standing committee with our school district where we need to build a better relationship with our agencies. So there are many, many things that we're working on. I'm excited to be able to continue down and doing these services for the community. We have a lot of challenges. District 1 has a lot of challenges, but I look at it, we have a ton of opportunities, especially along the Wilbur Corridor and with our downtown area. So I'm excited to be continuing in this effort and supporting my community.
Thank you. Tamisha, Joy and Mandy are pretty well known in Antioch. They've been around a while. People don't know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, I am a homeowner here in Antioch. I'm also a mother to 2 sons, and I'm a grandmother. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who's adorable and amazing. I am a graduate of in psychology, so I have a BA in psychology from Cal State East Bay. I have been the executive director of the Safe Return Project for 5 years now, but I'm the co-founder, and that's been a 10-year journey to fight for equity and decarcerating people who should really be receiving services in our community. Really looking at the criminalization of Black and Brown people as a public health issue, the fact that we incarcerate more people with mental health and substance dependency issues, and we use law enforcement to enforce around issues like homelessness rather than meeting those issues with resources. And so I've been doing that work for the last 10 years. It originated in Richmond, where I'm originally from. I've lived here for 5.5 years in Antioch. Bought my home here as an opportunity to build a new future for me and my family. And I've been on the ground talking to community members that I had previous relationships with and have built new relationships with around the issues that I saw as soon as I moved to this community. I have years of experience in violence prevention work, reducing gun violence to an all-time low in the city of Richmond. One loss to gun violence is too many, and I lost my brother to gun violence. So I've been fighting that fight for a little over 15 years now, and really was excited to be able to work to bring police and community together in the city of Richmond and really have clear dialogue around police accountability.
Okay.
And so the work that I do is really about investing in people directly impacted by issues like criminalization, poverty, and racial disparity, empowering those folks to move the needle forward on social change in their community and make sure that they impact public policies so that we can have equity for all folks. And I've largely done that work in Richmond and a lot of justice reinvestment work at the level of the county, moving millions of dollars from the carceral state back into communities, into a reentry process that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Thanks, Tamisha.
And I really like to be a part of that.
Yeah, Manny, let's change the focus. We've talked about small businesses in Antioch and other cities. The pandemic has affected small business in a major way. What can the city do to help these businesses? And how much has it affected the small business?
It's affected small business tremendously. 40% of the people, not only locally, but actually across the country, are employed by small businesses. So Antioch is really along with that statistic. The restrictions on things like dining in have had a significant impact on our restaurateurs here in Antioch. So what can we do? We can take federal and state funding that may be coming to relief as a result of the pandemic and begin applying it to a program that not only provides some outright grants to these businesses to help them modify their, in the case of the restaurant, their dining facilities so that they can accommodate the fact that we're struggling through this pandemic. We will get through it, but it's going to take a time longer, I believe. So not only do the restaurateurs need some relief now, which they are getting, it should have happened in March of this year or so when things really were obvious that it was going haywire. but it does need to happen right away. The other side of it is that we're also coming up on the fall and winter months. So we know that businesses will have to follow some different protocols to allow for dining, perhaps inside, shopping inside. We need to provide some sort of ability for those businesses to adapt themselves accordingly.
Yeah.
So it needs to be an aggressive program. This is an opportunity for us to get out ahead of this issue instead of constantly chasing the ball around, which is what's been going on.
Yeah.
We need some innovative leadership to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of going into a restaurant and trying to eat outside in November for Thanksgiving.
happen.
I don't think I want to do that. And
Right.
we're not, New York, but it still gets kind of chilly out here. Joy, can the council do anything to help these businesses?
Well, thanks, Bob, for asking about that, because actually we are doing something about that. We just were able to actually push through an outdoor dining. In fact, the barricades just went up, especially for our downtown restaurants just this past week. We also have a small business grant program that is coming out available I think it's this week, $5,000 grants for small business. Over $105,000 will be given out to small businesses in the community. And then our economic development director, Kwame Reed, has really been working with the small business community and determining what their needs are regarding PPE, whatever the needs may be as far as meeting the challenges when it comes to indoor dining. It's going to take us a while to try to figure out exactly how long this thing is going to last. So we are directly working with all the businesses, and especially our Chamber of Commerce now. We've brought them into the fold and working together to really reach out to each individual business, especially the small businesses in the community that are really, really suffering, and trying to find a way to support them through this. And hopefully by mid-year in 2021, we'll be looking at a different situation.
Yeah, there's a measure on the ballot, Proposition 15. You're probably familiar with that. That would basically remove the limits on taxes for large businesses. Do you support that, Manny?
I do. In fact, I think not only does that need to take place, but I think we need a complete revamp of our community's fee program for attracting new businesses. We had a tremendous miss in Antioch. In fact, less than 500 feet from District 1 is one of the largest corporations on the planet that's establishing a distribution center in Oakley. My hat's off to them. Congratulations to the city of Oakley. We can't afford those kinds of misses, though, any longer. We need to have an aggressive program to bring businesses of the large scale. And Amazon will have some ancillary businesses that will be required. But I'll tell you what, it makes me nauseous to think that we missed an opportunity, perhaps, for a facility the size of that one. 2 million plus square feet of commercial space, anywhere from 2,400 to 2,800 new employees beginning to be working in that facility. That's a great win for the city of Oakley. They were aggressive. They went after it. They figured out what needed to happen in order to get that company to establish themselves in Oakley. We need that kind of a strategy going forward.
Can I just address that?
Sure, Joy. Sure.
I was just going to mention that was really, and kudos to Oakley, that was really a 20-year process in, getting that business park developed over there and bringing in the large communities. And I do think this will be beneficial to the city of Antioch for employment. They sit directly on the border over there. And honestly, if we had that much real estate available for us to be able to make something like that happen, well, we would be making it happen. But we do have other opportunities along the Wilbur Corridor, and we're going to be taking advantage of those as we move into this next year here and we come out of the pandemic.
Thanks. So Prop 15, Tamisha, what do you think about that?
I'm a big supporter of schools and community first. Proposition 15. I've been following this before it was even named schools and communities first, and doing my own research and understanding that this is a victory. This is undoing years of massive defunding of communities, resources, eroding in communities. The fact that this funding will go to school, it says schools and communities first. How do we invest money back in communities that have been devastated as a result of large businesses and corporations not paying their fair share? I think it's amazing. I also think that we need to make sure that those monies actually go where they're meant to go in our communities. And everybody needs to complete the census because that's another large gap in undercounted populations of individuals and communities where we don't get the funding and resources that our communities deserve to thrive. So definitely support Proposition 15. And I'm excited about what resources we could bring to our community.
Joy, you've been on the school board, so I'm assuming you support this, but you're talking about this Amazon facility. Amazon has a reputation of not paying taxes. Is that actually a miss for Antioch or something positive?
I think actually that's changed now, Bob. I think they are paying taxes. So I don't, hopefully this will be a boon not only for Oakley, for the Antioch district too. But in regards to Prop 15, honestly, I can't think of anything that probably was more devastating than Prop 13 back in the 70s. It literally obliterated funding for schools and for social services, homeless services, mental health, addiction services. And we are all seeing what's happened because of that. We are, especially in East County, an immense lack of services in meeting some of the needs for our community, especially surrounding homeless, addiction services, mental health. We don't have the infrastructure to be able to deal with these things. I'm personally more scared than anything because there is a tremendous amount of money going against Prop 15. And we as candidates, we need to be out there actively supporting this and letting our community know how important this is, not only to education, but to roads and to services for all of our community.
Finally, there's been this nationwide controversy about this concept of defunding the police. Now, I've done some research into that. It's not actually defunding it, it's basically redirecting some of the funding away from the police into other services. Tamisha, you mentioned something about police responding to mental health issues. Mandy, do you think there's a way for us to put more funding into services for the people that need it, like the homeless and the mental health, and not having to use police officers to do that?
I do, but again, it all depends upon how we allocate our funding, how we plan for that. Remember that we have to build some coalitions between the state and the county that have not been effectively taken out, not effectively done, I should say, fleshed out. We do need to work more closely with those entities that actually have the resources and they actually have the expertise to provide those types of services to people that find themselves in those situations. The issue of homelessness, what really complicates the matter is that we're really looking at three different groups of individuals. We're looking at people that are addicted to substances. We have some people that unfortunately are suffering from some form of mental illness. And then the third group are people that have lost their jobs because of the economy or circumstances beyond their control. And they find themselves, as well as their children in some cases, living on the streets, living out of a station wagon or a car or something. And so the approach is really different. Homelessness in and of itself is not a criminal. It's not a criminal activity. People should not be arrested for that. The police have to be involved when dealing with people that are unhoused, have actually violated the law. I mean, the law is the law. It affects everybody and it impacts everyone and it applies to everyone. So if someone is involved in illegal activity and it's affecting businesses or neighborhoods in the surrounding area, then the police need to be involved. But the police could potentially be going out when they do a inspection or they go out and they're addressing a complaint of some sort, having some experts on hand that are experts in the areas of mental health, which doesn't always happen.
Thanks,
we call
Mandy.
the police, we expect them to address all these different items, and in some cases, they may not be the best prepared to deal with it.
Thanks, Mandy.
It's truly a sad situation.
Thanks. Tamisha.
So I've been doing this work for the last 10 years. So like you said, when We have been doing justice reinvestment work in Contra Costa for 10 years, moving money away from law enforcement systems that criminalize, back into communities. Like I said originally, we have a reentry network of care that didn't exist 10 years ago as a result of the advocacy and coalition building to move those monies back down to the community. I think that when people hear defund, they think that you're talking about taking police away. I think that what's really happening is a conversation around how we can reimagine public safety, get at the root cause of what causes harm, and start to push resources back into the community. When I like came to Antioch, I learned about Measure W and really wanted to get on the ground and learn more about that. 15 million over 20 years. I'm really excited about what that could do around youth programs and quality of life in the city. And it was turned into a police funding measure, where the police department budget increased 39%. And 12 million committed to law enforcement with no real commitment to resources in the community. The community development portion of our annual budget is only 6%. Yeah, we'll get a youth development coordinator, but couldn't we have put a larger percentage of that money to a youth center? Couldn't we have used a larger percent of that money to address homelessness and housing? I think that's what the community is saying. Looking at what happened with Measure W in the city of Antioch and how 62% of the city's budget goes to law enforcement rather than providing for the needs of its residents, is the conversation. And so everybody wants and deserves quality policing services, but nobody wants to forfeit a better quality of life to overfund the police and underfund the direct needs of the community.
Thank you.
And that's the conversation of the day. In addition to police accountability, which we also lack here
Okay.
in the city of Antioch.
I got to
And
stop you
people
there.
want to
I
know
got to
how
stop
we
you
can
there
hold
because
police
we're out of time. I want to thank our candidates for answering these very important questions. Each of you now has 2 minutes to make a closing statement, and we'll start with Manny.
Thank you very much, Bob, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this important forum. I really appreciate that. Being elected into office in November is a privilege that I'm hoping that the people of Antioch and specifically the voters in District 1 will give me. It is a privilege. It will be an honor to serve you. What I bring to the table is some fresh ideas on how to address some of the more critical and chronic problems that we've been dealing with for the last 4 years, most certainly. They've not gotten better, they've gotten worse. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we have had some planning that has not been consistent. As a matter of fact, if you think about it in the way of one would design a house, what's been happening is we see the blueprint laid out in front of us. But you know what? Right now, the swimming pool in the backyard is being built in the middle of the living room. There's a lot of things that just simply don't make sense. Our hearts are in the right place, but the planning is not in the right place. I'm a small businessman. I'm a business owner. I know how to budget to get things done, and that's really what the key is here. So yes, reform in the police department will be important. I'm open to that. I'm willing to discuss that. I'm willing to consider that. What I'm not willing to consider is reallocating resources to the point where Measure C and Measure W were passed to make our communities safer. And I do not want us to go back to 2012, where Antioch was the second most violent city in California. We're not going there. I'm sorry. That is not going to be a viable solution for us going forward. Thank you very much. I would appreciate your vote and your support. November 3rd, I would be privileged to serve you.
Thank you, madam. Tamisha.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for this discussion. I think it was an amazing discussion. Thank you, Councilmember Modson and Manny. I learned a lot today. What I will say is that we are in this mess that we're in right now because the people's vote has been mismanaged. The people's vote has been mismanaged in this city, and I am speaking directly to voters that in November, should you elect me as your district representative for Antioch District 1, that I will not mismanage your vote, that we can work together to build healthy community right here in Antioch and in District 1. We can work together to make sure that the needs of every resident is being met, and that we really preserve equity and build a more equitable system in this city. I'm committed to working for you. I'm committed to working for the voters, families, and children here in District 1 in Antioch. So vote for me in November. A vote for me is a vote for change.
Thank you, Tamisha. And finally, Joy Motz.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I was elected to the City Council less than 2 years ago in a citywide election, winning every precinct in the city of Antioch. My seat on the council would typically be a 4-year term, but because the city of Antioch has moved to voting districts, that time was shortened to 2 years. I am honored to be serving the residents of Antioch in District 1. This is my community, where my family and my closest friends live, and where I've lived my entire life. I love this historic city. It has been my privilege to fight for the community for over 20 years. As a school board trustee, a nonprofit director that sponsors 9 annual community celebrations, an advocate spearheading the renovation of 14 of our oldest schools and Antioch High School, and tackling suburban poverty and social inequities. These are incredibly tough times, and we need passionate, committed, and honest leaders to represent our residents, leaders that have a record of accomplishments and involvement in the community and in making this a better place. It is easy to be on the outside looking in with hypotheticals. But in my short tenure on council, I've worked hard to follow through on the promises I made when I ran in 2018 and what the voters asked when they passed Measure W. For example, I have spearheaded the creation of a homeless task force that is taking action to get unhoused off our streets, hired a youth services coordinator, and allocated funds to support youth services, doubled our code enforcement and abatement teams to address blight and illegal dumping, hired 33 police officers, spearheaded the creation of our city schools standing committee to support student success, funded our economic development department to spur local job growth. We are protecting our drinking water for the future generations. We are revitalizing, with the help of local developers, our downtown and North Antioch, and we have created grants to support our small businesses surrounding through the pandemic. As a council, we are taking on the critical concerns surrounding police reform, and unlike other communities, are poised to survive the economic fallout from COVID. I will fight for you and always vote for what is the best interest of my community. Please visit my website at joymotz.org for more information, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our forum for candidates running to serve on the Antioch City Council District 1 on November 3rd. Now, once again, the candidates are Tamisha Walker, Joy Motz, and Manuel Solis. For more information on the candidates, visit votersedge.org. The Elections Division has set up multiple drop boxes around the county for you to put your ballots in. For the one nearest you, please visit www.cocovote.us or call the office at 925-335-7800. The deadline to register for this election is October 19th, and please don't forget to vote by November 3rd. Thank you for watching. I'm Bob Butler.